welcome back to our collection here at Fenix Carriages. Today we're going to look at a most interesting set of carriages that originated from Althorp House when they had their sale in 2010, were purchased by liveryman Porsche Kenaway and sent to me here for restoration. What's particularly fascinating about these carriages is that they will give you a very clear insight into different carriages and their usage. Imagine you were to take a peek into the garage of a country estate. What do you think you'll find? Probably a Range Rover, a long wheelbase Land Rover for going around the estate, a people carrier, maybe a sports car, Aston Martin or something like that, and if you like, a little city runabout. Well, that's exactly what we have here, albeit the horse-drawn equivalent. So we're going to look at the Range Rover first. In fact, it's a private coach, a park drag, similar to what we looked at last time. But this one's a little bit different. I'm going to pull it forward. This one is by Holland & Holland, similar to the yellow one we looked at last time. But this is a little bit more special because it's a tiny little bit more upmarket. The most obvious thing is that it's silver mounted. The hubcaps are silver, the handles here are silver. So a little bit of a status symbol. And in actual fact, the furniture on your harness that the horses would wear would have to match. So the horses would have had silver mounted harness. It was in a bit of a state when it came here, so we've done a complete restoration, and we also managed to find some silver-mounted original Holland & Holland lamps. Come and have a look inside. So here we have a silver-mounted Holland & Holland lamp. And of course, that will display here in the lamp bracket. But when we show these carriages, traditionally we always carry the lamps inside because these coaches would have been used in the daytime. The lamps would have been carried for emergency use if you happen to be delayed, but they weren't usually displayed outside on the coach. But lovely to have original lamps with the original coach. We're going to take a quick look in the rear boot because I said last time that on a private coach the boot usually opened downwards, so you had a tabletop. This coach was different. It's perfectly correct, but it was built with a side opening boot like that, and it didn't actually in fact ever have cellarettes inside. When this coach was used, the chances are if they were going for a picnic or for some sporting occasion, they would have had a fleet of other carriages bringing all the props, the tables, the crockery and the food that you would have needed. But when we tend to use them today, we take everything with us because we just take the one coach. So we made these cellarettes in our workshops and put them in the back. I'll just show you the top one, which is partitioned for glasses, and this is where you'd have your plates or crockery, and then the lower ones for your bottles, your booze, and so on, all zinc lined. Well, we spent a considerable time looking at coaches in our last session, so I want to move on to the other carriages because we have some superb examples here, and this particular set of carriages are all by Peters of London, and Peters, again, another first-class make. We're first going to look at this one. This is what we call a body brake, and this would have been the equivalent of your long wheelbase Land Rover station wagon. Excellent everyday vehicle round the estate, a people carrier, and body brakes were used also as your exercise vehicle for your coaching team. I really like this vehicle. It's comfortable to drive, it's lightweight, so your horses aren't pulling such a heavy vehicle as a coach. And for what is basically a working vehicle, it is very, very stylish. The whole shape of it, the curve of these seat risers and everything is just absolutely exquisite in its design. And you can always tell a top make by the amount of work in the unnecessary bits. Have a close look at these carved dub ends here. If these weren't here, the vehicle would work perfectly well, but they're purely for effect, but they're not just painted for the decoration, they're beautifully carved. Totally unnecessary, but a bit of a status symbol, saying that even on my working vehicles, I have the best quality. And take a close look at the actual turntable, the actual forecarriage itself. There again, for a working vehicle, absolutely exquisitely crafted. The way these supports just curve, each with a little bit of carving on the end to match. Beautiful work, no expense spared for an everyday carriage. We like to use this vehicle early in the season when the horses are still getting fit for social drives. The beauty of it is, being lighter weight, it can still take a number of guests. This is what we call wagonette seating, where all the passengers sit sideways facing in, so you can be trotting along having a good chat, and of course folding down steps here to enable you to get in. So the next carriage is our people carrier, and here we have, again by Peters, a private omnibus. Now, in the past, I've always preferred coaches to omnibuses. I tend to find omnibuses looking a bit square and bulky until I met this one. This is the most beautifully shaped omnibus you will ever see. So again, a working vehicle. The private omnibus would have been used perhaps for collecting guests from the station or for family outings, family picnics. And again, rather like the last vehicle we looked at, beautifully crafted, no expense spared, lovely carved dub ends, lovely crafted turntable, very, very unusually fine for a private omnibus. Additionally, there's some features on this carriage that are outstanding and I've never seen before. The most obvious to me here, if you look, is that lamp. The lamp you see here, attached to the bulkhead, is pointing inside. This is the first time I've ever seen internal lighting in the carriage. This is state of the art. This was the latest of its day. Come and have a look inside. So I'm just going to point out here, it's probably not easy to see just on the video, but the most beautiful curve of the door and the back of this carriage. There again, far more elegant than you often see in an omnibus. And this inside is absolutely original. It's all we had to do was clean it. And if you cast your eye right to the front, you will see that lamp that lights up the inside. Very rare to see the ceiling intact, a sort of paper cloth material that's quite fragile, but fortunately all intact here. And the original carpet and lino underneath the carpet. Absolutely exquisite. So we have good sized steps here to enable access to the roof. That's where all the luggage would have been. We have a luggage rail and a reinforced roof, so it will take quite a lot of weight up there. and an extra row of seats facing forward. This is a big vehicle. This would carry a lot of people, a lot of luggage. As I said, a working vehicle, but very, very fine, a lovely example of an omnibus. So these two vehicles would have been pulled by either a pair or a four in hand. Both carriages had poles for both. We're going to move on to a smaller vehicle, which would have been the private runabout for the owners of the household, their own car, the equivalent, if you like, of your Aston Martin. Here we have a Stanhope Phaeton. The Stanhope Phaeton would have been an owner-driven vehicle, whereas the last few carriages we've looked at would have been driven by a coachman. This was very much a private vehicle. You would have had your groom sitting in the back, but husband and wife sitting inside the vehicle. Pair of horses would have pulled this, and obviously you can see a hood to keep the occupants dry. And this is rather a nice example of a hood mechanism, because the whole hood actually does come off. So it can be in summer just without the hood, mudguards slot on the same brackets, and you've got, if you like, a lighter looking carriage. So I can show you the hood down. Quite a simple process. Completely alters the shape of the carriage, and as you can imagine, with this whole hood arrangement taken away and mudguards replaced, you have yet again a finer looking carriage. And imagine this pulled by a lighter pair of horses, a pair of hackneys or something like that. This would have been a very smart turnout for going out in yourself. Like most of the carriages in this particular group, there's some interesting features that you don't always see. You'll notice we have some steps here at the back, and yet we have the step here for getting into this seat. That is because this is convertible. You can turn this seat round, add another one, and there is a door at the back to turn it into a wagonette seating type arrangement. The other feature, which is quite unusual, is for a Stanhope Phaeton to have a set of steps on it. But these steps pull out, unfold, and attach here, so the lady of the household can mount the vehicle easily without getting her dress muddy or caught up in the wheel area. These are interesting wheels on these carriages. Wheels are a whole separate topic, but I particularly like these ones because these are English pattern wheels, but the spokes aren't staggered. Is what I mean by that. Usually on an English pattern wheel, where the spokes tenon into the hub, they're offset, they're staggered for strength basically. These wheels, all the spokes are in line. It makes them appear a little bit finer. Possibly not as strong, but clearly, certainly strong enough. So with a sporting pair of horses, which would you prefer, an Aston Martin or this? Well, as far as I'm concerned, it has to be this. You'll never get wheels like that on an Aston Martin, will you? The last carriage we're going to look at today is the equivalent of our city runabout. It's what we call a broom. We haven't actually restored this carriage yet, which makes it interesting for you to see, and also to compare to the ones you have just seen, which would have arrived here in a similar state. Now, a broom was quite a common carriage. There would have been hundreds of brooms in every city over the UK. Many were used as cabs for public transport, and many were used by private individuals. And this particular one was Earl Spencer's private city runabout. And similar to the others, it has some lovely features that you often don't find in a broom. More often than not, a broom was pulled by a single horse, particularly the ones that we use for cabs. This particular one has what we call a splinter bar and pole fitting, so this would have been used with a pair of horses. Again, similar to all the carriages in this particular collection, wonderful ironwork, beautifully carved dub ends, lovely shaped splinter bar, a very, very well proportioned example of a broom. So I'm going to open the door, and the first thing you'll notice is this rather fine step guard. That cover comes away with the door and leaves a clean and dry step, because you have to remember the streets of London would have been filthy, and it saves the owner slipping on the step or getting his shoes dirty when he arrives at his destination. And we have a rather sumptuous interior here, in need of a fair bit of care and attention, but of particular note is this fold-up mirror. Of course, Earl Spencer, who used this carriage, would have been a politician, and this would have allowed him to adjust his wig, make sure everything was presentable before his meeting. So lovely little features. This is rather like having going to your car dealer and saying, I want all the extras, or the sat nav, the lot. This little cabin has everything that you would require in that day. So let's have a closer look at this rather luxury interior. We have ivory fittings. There would have been a shutter and a window that folds down into this door. Beautifully padded handles. And here we have a little rear window under this flap. All deep buttoned upholstery. And this is rather a rare, fine little piece. This cord here, if I pull that, you'll see it runs along the ceiling, through the front, and here we have a loop. This would have attached to the collar of the driver. So if the occupant wanted to signal to the driver, he pulled this cord, it would have flapped the lapel, and the driver would have realised he had to stop and take his instructions accordingly. And we also have some rather fine blinds that they still work, look, that come down like that. Absolutely marvellous, and they should also go back, and they do. I can't wait to get on with the restoration of this carriage. And finally, I want to show you the back end here. A lot of brooms used to have what was called an urchin bar, which is a series of spikes fitted here to stop the urchins jumping on and getting a free ride, because nobody would have known. Far more subtle on this carriage. No urchin bar, but look at these little pips forged into the top leaves of the springs. Urchin pips. Certainly rather uncomfortable if you decided to sit on these springs and get a free ride. This is a particularly fascinating historical collection of carriages. It shows the wonderful and varied skills of the coachmaker's art, but it also shows how a family would have travelled. Next time we're going to look at three very different carriages. One that Prince Albert travelled in, one that was given an award by the Worcestershire Company of Coachmakers in the 1870s, and one that you would have gone cockfighting in. Until then, goodbye.